A congressman and member of the House Armed Services and Agricultural Committees, Austin Scott. Congressman, good morning to you. Your reaction, especially with this new information we're getting from the Secret Service. Oh, we do have visitor logs, but Congress has to call us in for us to give us the names.
Yeah, Cheryl, good morning. I'm a little taken back at how his lawyers were even allowed to do the search. I know in my office, even as a member of the Armed Services Committee, if someone goes to work for me, even if they've had clearances in the past, it takes months and months and months to get our staff members cleared where they can even view classified information in a room where they're not allowed to remove that documentation. And the idea that the Justice Department would allow lawyers without clearances to go search for the documents, and that means handle the documents, I don't understand how they allowed this to happen. The search there, it should have been handled by people who were in the law enforcement agencies. It should have been handled by people who the Justice Department made sure had the proper clearances to handle the classified documents. And it's clearly a situation where, the Justice Department is using kid gloves with regard to the current president of the United States, and they used FBI tactical raids with the former president of the United States. So it's a total double standard, and it's one of the reasons that Justice Department has lost so much credibility with the American citizens.
Yeah, your colleague Corey Mills also saying the same thing. He told Fox News Digital that you can't make this stuff up. The fact that the lawyers were in there and the DOJ kind of basically just mishandled this in general. And I think sloppy is the term that I've been using over this. Hunter Biden wrote in his memoir that he was quarantined at that same house on election night. This is during 2020, so this is during the COVID lockdowns. Your reaction to that, and also how soon before we get some hearings called on this?
I think the hearings come pretty quick. And, again, the fact that Hunter Biden was quarantined at the house means that he would have had access to the files, which means that somebody committed a crime in creating access to classified information for somebody who did not actually have the clearances to review that information. And I'm a little taken back, Cheryl. I don't understand how the documents got into someone's garage. I know that when we see documents, we walk into a room that's called a SCIF. When we walk out of that room, we never have any of those documents with us. We come in with nothing in our hands, and we leave with nothing in our hands. And the files that we look at are numbered. The pages in the files are numbered. And so I just don't understand how Joe Biden was allowed to actually carry documents out of a room with him into non-secured areas or facilities. And so the fact that Hunter Biden was there means that he would have had access to that information. And again, those hearings are going to come pretty quick. And there needs to be, one of the subject matters is, did his attorneys, and I do not believe they did his attorneys have the proper clearances to handle the classified information? But again, Cheryl, you see the double standard in the mainstream media and in the Justice Department now, and that's one of the things that's so damaging to our country.
Right. Lee Carter's on set with me. Lee, go ahead.
So one of the things, Congressman, that we see is the polling after these kinds of incidents doesn't really change opinions that much of this president or President Trump. But what ends up happening, I think the impact really is then trust in the institutions, what happens to trust in the judicial system, trust in the media. What do you want voters to take away from all of this? Because in many ways, going to hearings and investigating Biden now actually puts trust in Congress even to question, saying everything's political.
Yeah, it has become political over the last several years. There are three committees that need to be absolutely apolitical. I would tell you that's the Armed Services Committee, the Intel Committee, and the Foreign Affairs Committee. I think those are the areas, those committees, historically, up to and until the last several years, have been very nonpartisan. Some of them continue to maintain that nonpartisanship. If you look at the Intel Committee and what Adam Schiff did with it and the way Nancy Pelosi and he orchestrated the whole Russia hoax thing and used the Intel Committee to hide behind those doors and then come out and speak in abstract and make insinuated accusations of President Trump. I think it did tremendous credibility damage to both the institution of Congress and especially the Intel Committee. And hopefully with Republicans taking over the House, we can get some of that credibility back. I expect us to conduct ourselves in a manner where, an apple's an apple and an orange is an orange.
It also, too, the House controls the purse strings. The U.S. just hit that $31.4 trillion debt limit. That was yesterday. Now, the Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, she wrote to Kevin McCarthy, and she's pushing for a bill to lift the limit. Here's what she says. The period of time that extraordinary measures may last is subject to considerable uncertainty, including challenges of forecasting payments and receipts of the U.S. government months into the future. But one of your colleagues has also said that, and this is Kevin Hern out of Oklahoma, he says enough is enough. He says the media is being irrational. There's too much hysteria around the debt limit being hit. Whether or not you think Janet Yellen is being hysterical, I don't know. But your reaction to all of this, isn't it time for fiscal responsibility to take root in Washington? And that's your party's chance right now.
It is, but let's Cheryl, the most important thing here is the integrity and the honesty in the debate. So Joe Biden signed the omnibus bill on December the 30th, and I have in my hands the daily Treasury statement. Anybody can look them up on the internet; they're readily available. So the national debt limit is $31 trillion. On December the 30th, it's a little more than that, but December the 30th. When Joe Biden signed the legislation, the national debt subject to the limit was $31.347 trillion. $31.347 trillion. So we had already effectively hit the debt limit when Joe Biden signed the omnibus bill on December the 30th. Today, the latest Treasury report shows the debt subject to the limit is $31.342. So some days are better than others. The actual debt subject to the limit is less today than when Joe Biden signed the piece of legislation on December the 30th. Again, and that's according to the daily Treasury statements. So if you want to look at the gamesmanship that's being played here, if she had been honest, she would have been sending letters in December saying that we have hit the debt limit. Again, debt subject to the limit was higher the day Joe Biden signed the piece of legislation than it is today. So the people who made the decisions on the omnibus bill, and Mitch McConnell's one of them, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, the four of them had a couple of choices. They could have chosen to do a continuing resolution without the debt limit, and we as Republicans in the House would have supported a debt limit to fund that continuing resolution. Not all of us, but I would have, and I think enough of us would have supported debt limit to fund the continuing resolution, so there would have been no problem. Then you've got the potential for them to pass a continuing resolution with the debt limit attached. Again, then we wouldn't have this problem.
And it didn't happen. Yeah, and it didn't happen. Yeah, well, I want to move forward if we can now. I know there's a lot of water under the bridge here. Excuse me. But I do want to move on. I don't have a lot of time left with you, Congressman. But I do want to ask you about this $2.5 billion aid package to Ukraine. That's 90 Stryker armored personnel carriers. It's 59 more Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. We've already given them about $27 billion in military assistance. Where do you stand on this debate, since we're talking about spending and debt?
Yeah, well, that's right. I very much support what we have done in aiding Ukraine. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. I do not believe the Russians were going to stop at Ukraine. I think the Russians would have moved through the whole country of Ukraine. I think they would have then moved either to Moldova or Georgia. The Russians have a goal to control the Black Sea. There's a tremendous amount of food. There's a tremendous amount of fertilizer. That Black Sea region is extremely important to the global economy and the food supply. I support what we have done in aiding Ukraine. I do think that we need to know exactly where that money's going. But I will tell you, had the Ukrainians not stood and fought as long and as hard as they have, and I do not believe they could have succeeded without U.S. weapon systems, then I believe that the Russians would have already moved through Ukraine and would be looking at taking Moldova and the country.
Maybe, Congressman, what about Germany? What about, I mean, I think that, at this point, wouldn't it be fair to reach out to our allies in Europe? And because, Germany is still stalled on whether or not they want to provide support to the Ukrainians. And that's currently happening, that debate. So, it seems to be falling on the United States. And I think that's the worry here.
This is not just a U.S. mission. This is a NATO mission to protect our NATO allies. We do not want Russia pulled up to the eastern flank of our NATO allies. If you look at Russia's aggression, they do this every 4 to 6 years. They're across the border in Georgia. They're across the border in Moldova. They're across the border in multiple countries right now, not just the Ukraine. It is only because of how how gross the atrocities in the Ukraine have been and how aggressive they've been in Ukraine, that we're talking about this. Again, the Russians were not going to stop in Ukraine. They would have gone all the way through Ukraine. They would have taken Moldova. Their goal is to control the Black Sea, and then they can effectively landlock those economies. Their oligarchs would have controlled the ports of the Black Sea. And I do think that it has been in the U.S. national security and best interest of the American citizens for us to help the Ukrainians stop the Russians.
Congressman Austin Scott. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.